Thank you very much, Mr. Keret, for having the time for the La Cueva del Erizo. The title of your novel is in English, The 7 Good Years. Were they so good, those 7 years?
Well, the 7 good years is a biblical term from the dream of the Pharaoh, that Joseph had interpreted, where you have the 7 fat cows that represent the 7 good years, and after them come the 7 skinny cows, which are the 7 bad years. And for me, the 7 good years were the 7 years between the birth of my son and the death of my father, in which I had the privilege both to have a father and to have a child, and to feel as if I'm a part of a lineage.
Why first person and not fiction in this occasion?
The truth is that, I've been writing for 28 years, and I've only written fiction in the past. But when my father had died, I had this urge, which is very childish. Sometimes when you're a kid, you want to tell other kids that your father is taller and stronger than their father. So I suddenly had this urge to write to the world about my father, my family, and how privileged I think I am to grow up in such a special and unique family.
Are we always looking for the lost lands?
Well, with me, I think I grew up in a very special family for very sad reasons, because both my parents are Holocaust survivors, and my mother was orphaned, losing both her parents in a very young age, and also my father never had a normal childhood. And in a sense, the fact that they never finished the process of growing up in a normal way had made them stay a little bit like children throughout their life. Not going through teenager years, not going through rebellion against their parents. So I could say that I grew up in a kind of a never land, in that sense that that my parents, for example, would always say to me, if you don't want to go to school, don't go. We will write some kind of excuse on paper. You can stay home. If you want to stay late and watch TV, you can do that, because when they grew up during the war, and my mother grew up without parents, so there was never kind of an authority around them. There was nothing that would challenge them. So I'm not sure that I grew up in the most healthy surrounding, but there was something in the way that they've raised me that helped me keep my childhood and my childhood spirit all my life.
Does death really feel closer in the Middle East?
Yes, it is, because I think that when I go to a place like Spain, there are these kind of relaxed feelings that that when you talk to a barber and ask him about the future, then the worst case scenario would be that the Catalans will separate from Spain. But the fact that that Madrid will keep standing, that the Spanish language will be spoken, it's not even an issue. While when you grow in Israel and you don't know a lot about the future of your country or the regions that you live in, then there is always this kind of anxiety that basically it could be genocide, it could be a civil war between fundamentalist religious Jews and secular ones. It could be all those kind of things that will change the world as you know it. And I think that there is something about this fear, that it invokes many bad things, but on the other hand, it puts you in a very existential kind of state. You cannot be totally blasé about your choices or about the way that you live your life. You always have a sense of urgency that many times connects you to the things of value in life.
The fact of living in a permanent war zone makes you trivialize what is fear and the value of life?
Well, I think many times there is something about the extremity of reality around you, that when you live in it for too long, you become blind to it. Me and my wife, we could have a fight, and then there would be a missile attack, and we would run for cover. And the moment that the missile explodes, we would stand up and keep on fighting, you know? It would just be an obstacle for us living our normal, routine kind of life, you know? I had a friend who broke up with her boyfriend and was looking for an excuse to call him back. So the moment there was a terrorist bombing in his neighborhood, she could call him and say, "Are you okay?" And now they're back together. So the fact is that there are life and death issues all around us doesn't necessarily mean that we live them with the pathos that one would expect in a Hollywood movie. You know, it just becomes a part of our landscape. I think that if you live in the desert or if you live in the North Pole, the weather stops being an issue. You know, Eskimos don't talk a lot about how cold it is to live in their igloo. They just talk about who should be the one who washes the dishes.
You tell in your novel that when you travel to a foreign country, you perceive that people see you as an enormous lizard.
I was talking about Indonesia because Indonesia is a country that does not have a diplomatic relationship with Israel. So when I had a reading in Indonesia, some people came because they were interested in my literature, but others came just to see a Jew because they never saw a Jew in their life. They heard about Jewish people, but it was their first chance to meet somebody who is the other. I think that the great gift of literature and art in general is that you can meet somebody from a different culture, but at the same time not to be introduced to his appearance or nationality, but to his feelings and his emotions. And when I read a Japanese writer or when I read an Indonesian writer, I don't see them as somebody from a different nationality because I'm exposed to their emotions, and their emotions are just the same as mine. So I actually feel that there is something in those trips that in the bottom line starts from a feeling of otherness, but ends always with a feeling of familiarity.
Aren't we better and more ourselves when we get rid of borders of passports?
Yeah, well, you know, I must say that religion and nationality, they are inventions. They are some sort of arbitrary ideas that we've introduced to our life. You know, if you look at the history of man, you know, actually religion is not such an ancient concept as we feel. You know, when we lived as primates, you know, as Neanderthal people and later as Homo sapiens people, we did not see other people as people of other countries or people who believe in a different kind of God. You know, we just saw them the same way that an animal see an animal of its own kind, you know. So I think that, you know, there are many wonderful and beautiful things in religion, introducing morality and a sense of community, but it also presents the danger of making people think that they hold the key to the truth and that they are superior to others.
So how do you perceive a Palestinian when you run into him? As a listener as well?
Well, I want to say that, you know, that the political processes in Israel actually changed the everyday life relationship between Israel and Palestinians, because when I was a boy, because there was no Palestinian Authority and the entire Gaza Strip was totally occupied by Israel, then Israelis and Palestinians would meet on a daily basis. They would work together. Of course, you know, the Palestinians did not have the same rights, but they were very human. You know, every Israeli would know Palestinians by name. Every Palestinian would know Israelis by name. In the current reality, basically, the only Israeli that a Palestinian gets to see is a soldier who breaks down his door or stops him at a checkpoint. And the only Palestinians that the Israeli gets to meet is a suicide bomber who explodes in a cafe next to him. So in the current reality, it's very easy for radical forces, both in Israel and Palestine, to demonize the other side, because we don't really have this kind of reference. You know, my child never met a Palestinian. For him, the mention of Palestinian is something that is mentioned in the news whenever there is a conflict. He never ate or drank or spoke or played football with a Palestinian child. So in this sense, I think that the younger generation is more prone to racist propaganda and to politics that helps to create an alienation between the two people.
So we are going in the wrong direction.
Well, I think it is the right direction, creating this Palestinian Authority, which is a step toward a Palestinian country, which I think is a necessity. I think that every person should have their freedom and their ability to define their identity. But right now, I feel that we are in a very down point in the history of Israel and in the history of the region.
There is a story in your book where you said that you discuss about your 3-year-old being necessary to serve into the army. Don't you think in those moments that maybe this is not the place where you want your child to be raised?
I think that every parent who has a child has this fear that one day the child will stand before two options which are kind of damned if you do and damned if you don't, I think that for a parent in Europe, this fear of such a dilemma is totally abstract. For Israeli, it's completely concrete. You have a child, you know that when he'll be 18 years old, he'll either join the army, maybe kill people, maybe get traumatized, maybe will be sent to wars that neither him or you could stand behind. Or on the other hand, he could not go to the army, and in that sense run away from a shared responsibility of all the people in the country, be taught a bad lesson about being a part of a community, be boycotted and segregated by other children of his age or young people of his age for not serving in that army. So it's a totally damned if you do and damned if you don't kind of dilemma. And in Israel, you can hold your baby when it's 8 years old, and like in fairy tales of, when the evil witch will return and take your son, that 18 years from now, you will stand at this point where you have to help your son make this impossible choice.
You have experienced outrageous situations, anti-Semitic situation. Me as a woman, I have lived outrageous situation as a woman. What can we do to change things? Because we cannot change who we are and where are we born.
Yeah, well, I really want to say that, that racism and fear from the other is not an ideology. It's an instinct. Experiment shows that if you put babies of different races together, they will always be more aggressive, feel more anxiety, and they will always alienate themselves from anyone who's different from them. I think that the beauty of humanity is that we can fight our instincts, the same way that when we feel sexual urges, we don't necessarily attack the other side to fulfill those urges. We can deal with our fear and anxieties and educate ourselves. I think that in this kind of system, a lot of the responsibility falls on the soldiers, on the shoulders of our elected representative. I was very happy and touched to see, let's say in Germany or in France, where leaders took the front stage saying every person who attacks a Jew or who attacks a Muslim or who insults them basically spits in the face of the German democracy or the French democracy. I want to say that this was something very, very common and essential in the Israeli society, but today I'm sad to say that with our current leadership, we don't have this set example. I've yet to see my prime minister to step on a stage and to explain the essential need of keeping liberal values in the Israeli society. In the last Gaza war, there were many actions that I perceived as racist against Israeli Arabs and against Arabs in general. And I didn't see the government taking a stern and a clear position saying these kind of actions, they transcend politics. One could be right-wing, one could be left-wing, but the necessity to defend the freedom of speech and the necessity to defend minorities in your society are basically the pillar, or one of the main pillar of any society. I do not know any society which allowed racism to go wild, which did not find itself in the end destroying its inner structure. And I must say that I, as much as I admire the Israeli people for the tolerance, I'm extremely disappointed from the Israeli leadership for really what I could see as something that either it's some racist representations themselves, or what I would see as cowardice, leadership that is afraid to stand and say those very, very important truths just because of a fear of losing some kind of electoral power, or to be exposed to criticism from racist and extreme groups.
Do you think that even pacifists love Angry Birds?
Yeah, one thing I would say, I would never say that I'm a pacifist. I really believe that, we live in a very violent neighborhood in the world, and that, that in Israel having an army is not a privilege. But the fact that, sometimes we have to fight wars does not mean that wars are the only solution to the problems that we have. And right now we have a right-wing government that does not believe in the diplomatic and negotiation choices, and by being passive invites the next confrontation. In the last 10 years we had 4 wars or 4 army operations in Gaza, and if we will not do anything, if we will not show initiative, if we will not try to change this reality, then the 5th one is inevitable.
Why do you think your writing connects so well with your readers?
The truth is that I don't know, because as a young person, I always had great problems communicating myself. I used to stutter, and people would not even understand what I was saying, and I think it came a lot from this kind of lack of confidence. Whenever I would want to share an idea with a friend or somebody that I would meet, I think I had this inner fear that I'm different, that I'm strange, that I'm weird, that the thing that goes in my heart and my mind will seem totally foreign, twisted to the people around me. And I must say that through writing and through publishing, I realized that we're all different and strange and weird, and that when I write a story about what I think is my secret dark side, then people come to me and say, we have the same thoughts too. So for me, publishing was like joining this huge AA meeting, Alcoholic Anonymous meeting, in which I realized that my human and existential anxieties were not in any way different than the fears and anxiety of all the people around me.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.